Good now, revolutionaries, and welcome to the Rise Up Morning Show.
The Rise Up Morning Show.
I told the guys it was a momentous occasion that we were going to make history today, and that is because today is brought to you by the new official mug department at the Rise Up Morning Show. You know, we've done 300 plus episodes with the beautiful collectible first edition Rise Up Morning Show mug, and I finally got my new second edition mug in the mail today. And for everybody who's joining us in audio land on the podcast, I have got to encourage you to see this thing on video, because wait till you see this beautiful white mug. Look at this thing. Isn't that just
dun, dun, dun.
Lovely? Our logo looks so good. The little breakfast bits look so good on there. It's 15 ounces, so it's even bigger. You can, of course, still get the small version or an even bigger 20-ounce version. I can't even imagine what a 20-ounce coffee mug is like, how I would feel doing the show in the morning. But guys, it looks, the camera doesn't do it justice. I've got this like harsh ring light meant to make my face look better, but it's the perfect mug.
If you see it on TikTok,
beautiful.
the lighting looks nice.
Yeah, I am really very bullish on this mug.
It's the perfect time to buy.
And if you want to get yours, you can head on over to
Now we
Rise
just
Up.
need a 1 ounce mug.
A 1 ounce mug for
1 ounce
espressos,
mug.
baby. I know. As soon as I find a supplier, I am sending you one. And I would love to send you one too. Maybe we'll do 300 episodes with this thing. And if you are a first edition mug purchaser and enjoyer, then be on the lookout, because today is the day. I've got the POAPs. I am sending out POAPs to every email address associated with the mug purchase, so that even if you drop yours, even if it comes apart in the dishwasher, your dog eats it or whatever, you can always have the token that proves you were there when that mug was here. But I think I'm going to retire it. I'm going to put it up there in a beautiful spot on my shelf and just let it watch on from a restful place. So thank you, mug, for being part of our story. Congratulations. And let us know, what's your part in our story? How you doing today? What's your question, suggestion? If you're here to learn Web3, you got a crypto question, you're curious or skeptical about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, blockchain, AI, this is the place for you. We're here 7 days a week, 4 days a week. What are we doing now? Monday through Thursday, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Well, 4 days a week, 5 times a week.
It's tough, man. And then we're in the Discord 24/7. So show Monday, Thursday, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time. Wednesday evenings, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And 24/7, discord.gg/riseup. It's where the show lives 24/7. We'd love to see you there. And today is kind of a big show day for us. We got a lot to talk about. But first, let me just check in. You guys doing okay? You making it this morning?
So far, so good. I am a little EP sleepy. Sleepy little sleep boy. But, you know, getting through it. And then I have to drive 45 minutes to the closest DMV that had an available time slot for me to get my real ID finally, so I can hopefully get my flight back home from California when I go on vacation.
It's a trap. They're going to deport you, bro.
Damn. Hey, they tried to deport me in middle school. That's a fun story.
Did they really? Oh, man.
Yeah, they called me into the office and were asking me a whole bunch of questions about where I'm from and my family's from. They didn't believe I was an American citizen, and they froze my bank account. And my mom had to come in with a whole bunch of papers and scream and yell at everybody, including the police and the principal's office. It was really fun.
Tell me why.
That sounds traumatizing.
Yeah, and I was in 6th grade, and they're like, "Will, where are you from?" And I was like, "Down the street." And they're like, "No, where are you really from?" And I was like, "We moved from Maine a little while ago." And they're like, "No, Will, where were you born?" And I was like, "Denver, Colorado." And they're like, "No, not where your parents told you to tell us where you're from. Where were you really born?" And I was just like, looking, I was just confused. I was like, I think I want to call my mom. So that's what I said to them. And then my mom came in with a fucking wrecking ball. It was hilarious.
That's wild.
That is absolutely wild. What did
they froze this little boy's bank account that had my birthday money in it. It was seized by the government. I never got it back.
Ride Dog said, you had a bank account at 6 years old?
Of course you did.
You are talking about Schmillion Schmatzen. Of course I had a bank account.
Why, at the end of it all, had they been suspicious?
It was because the school didn't have like my birth certificate and like other documentation and stuff. They had either lost it or like my parents forgot to send it in or something. Apparently they needed it. And also the school I went to had a lot of like immigrant families and stuff like that. This was in Northern Virginia at the time. And so, you know, they kept track of that stuff. And I'm sure they had instances where this happened probably once or twice a year. So they're like, oh, there's this one. And I was just like, me?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, my
great.
gosh. Well, I'm glad you're here today. I'm glad you made it. Alex, I hope the new dishwasher is beautiful, but we've got bigger news to talk about, which is primarily that Pokemon is coming on chain. This is not a drill, people. Have you heard this news, Will?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, they're on Sweet.
They're on Sui. I didn't know it until yesterday when I got to hear Alex on the panel at the Simplified show, and I was like, oh, so excited about it. So the TLDR, for anybody who doesn't know, is that Pokemon has been long speculated to be coming on chain. In 2023, was it? They posted that job opening for a Web3 specialist. And now, in recent weeks, there have been a lot of rumors swirling, starting with a privacy policy update. They debuted Pokemon Home, a cloud-based storage and trading app that has a new metal collection feature, and in its privacy policy, there were several languages, including Parasol Technologies as a developer of data. And Parasol is a Web3 gaming infrastructure company that was acquired by Mysten, which is the core team behind Sui. So shout out to several of our friends, including our friend Icy, which is where Simplified credited getting the news from. So I'm going to give him some credit too. He's got a great little update video that you can find on Twitter that'll tell you a little more about it.
Officially
But
on
of
the
course,
blockchain, the rumors turned out to be true.
if you've got questions about it, you can go to his post and just search Pokemon on Twitter. You are going to find all kinds of good news.
You could leave him a comment like, man, you would look so good on the Rise Up Morning Show.
Yeah, why don't you bully Icy a little bit, our friend, to tell
Light
him,
bullying. He's very
come
busy,
back.
but light bullying.
hang out with us again. We miss you. But it looks like the TLDR is they're doing this for a feature called Metals, and I have now gathered enough information to see that what they're doing is using blockchain as a ledger to trade what appear to just be digital items. So sort of like Web 2 in a Web 3 wrapper, but certainly not a nothing burger, especially in terms of news moving the price a little bit. The price has surged, depending on where you take your measuring stick from, for Sui, from 60 to 72%. They've had a good week. And mostly, I'm just excited to think about what we might get to do on chain with Pokemon. Metals is cool, but I am frankly ready for red version, blue version 3, as in Web 3, where each of my Pokemon is a provably unique digital item that lives forever on chain. And I can trade them and we can hang out with them and all that stuff. So what do you guys think about this? Am I getting too excited? Is the cart before the horse? And what other kinds of things are you ready to see on chain now that friggin' Pokemon is here?
I think everyone's getting a little too excited, which is odd for me to say because I love Pokemon and I love crypto. So like this is cool, and like I will be buying these, at least some of them. And so like I'm excited in that sense, but we've had big brands do stuff like on-chain before, and then it's just like a quick little gimmicky thing, and they never do anything with it. We've seen that a few times. I'm trying to think of some examples.
We've seen it every time they've done it. Porsche bungled it. Nike bungled it.
Yeah, and in this case,
all kinds of stuff.
With this, it was just I did some digging into it. It was just the venture capitalist going, "Hey, Pokemon, would you like $20 million?" And Pokemon said, "Sure." You can't do anything with any of the actual Pokemon. You can't build a game. You can't use the word NFT. You can't do several other things, but like we'll give you these medals that you can do. And it was just it's just Pokemon taking money from the VCs and saying like, sure, yeah, medals, here you go, and just like closing the door and turning away. So that's all it is at this point. Hopefully it expands. That'd be cool if it does expand. I like seeing Pokemon on chain. I'm excited. I like Pokemon medals. It gets me excited. As you can see my Pokemon cards, Pokemon cards in the back. But you know, we've seen so many brands do these quick one-off things and then nothing.
So, couple interesting tidbits. Pokemon is one of the biggest, most profitable IPs on the planet. So
It is the biggest.
it's the biggest.
Definitely by dollars.
I don't necessarily believe that they think they're going to make some sort of gigantic, you know, emergence into a new sector that they have no connections to, because they're everywhere. I could see that being the reasoning, Will, for sure. That makes sense. My hope, if I'm being optimistic, is that the way that they've chosen to do this, with just kind of like, we're not interested in like building and maintaining some sort of big ecosystem or doing some crazy whatever, like why Nike failed or why Nike pulled the plug on Artifact, all that kind of stuff. I think that makes it more likely to do well, because if ultimately what you're doing is just putting something on chain in a way that is like hyper controlled, but just kind of has like some access to this IP, that's cool. It makes me interested that Sui got the bid. We were kind of talking about it yesterday, and I think there's a couple options. Like one, you know, like you said, if there's a VC angle, then they're probably playing the big fish, little pond, and Pokemon is the biggest fish. So put the whale in the puddle, and it's the only thing that's going to matter on that chain. There's not a lot else that attracts regular attention, but the ecosystem itself has cultural significance and is very front of mind. So it's like kind of the ideal landing place for it. Plus, Move works well for the way Pokemon wants to do stuff and the way that Pokemon builds stuff. And if they were to bring more of like, I don't know, the evolutionary process on chain or the game and all this kind of stuff, you'd probably want simplicity. And obviously they are very well established. They know exactly, you know, how they like to build and how they like to do stuff or whatever. So I think it's cool. I'm, you know, not freaking out about it, but it's encouraging that they authorized use of the IP attached to this. Love that they banned the word NFT from participating in the conversation. I like that a lot. I'm a big fan of this. And I don't know. To me, it's refreshing to see it happen this way, with like here, put some stuff on chain. Let's see how this goes. Instead of like we're going to revolutionize Web3 and we're here and blah, blah, blah. Don't worry. Like I always think about what William Quigley said to us years ago, which was that the giant Web2 incumbents are not the ones who are going to do this right. And this is the first time when I've seen a Web2 incumbent do something and I'm like, that might actually matter. That might actually work. You feel like you're doing not very much, but you know, the funny punchline is that this might be the best attempt we've ever seen.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I kind of think I'm at the middle of that response, because on one hand, I am ready for Pokemon Go to be NFTs. I see all the ways that tokens would enhance and improve our experience with the characters that we love, with the stories that we love, with the games we love. But I do feel like this could be a more meaningful step in that direction than many brands, as you say, have taken so far. They're experimenting with blockchain to better manage asset security. Like, that's honestly what blockchains are designed to do.
I don't think they are.
You don't think so?
No, I think they were just like, oh, money? Yeah, sure. Here's the IP. Go do stuff.
Them.
And they closed the door. Them being Pokemon. And
I don't think
Pokemon's like,
$20 million is enough for Pokemon to risk their entire brand on untested technology.
Absolutely not, dude.
You can't
think that's
risk
like
Pokemon's
peanuts.
brand, though.
That's
It's unriskable.
I would
No,
It's
disagree
too
with
big
that.
to fail. Pokemon's too big to fail.
Do you think
yes.
so?
This isn't gonna like, if this went poorly, it wouldn't like bankrupt Pokemon. But when you're doing nearly $100 billion a year, 20 million is a butterfly's fart in the wind. And given what the general public's reception of blockchain tech into the gaming space has been, I don't think that you take that for a measly 20 million. I mean, what is that in percentage points of your annual revenue? That's ridiculous.
I think it's a marketing ploy. I do not think Pokemon gives a crap about anything on the blockchain.
But marketing
at
to
all.
who? Because their entire
crypto
audience is
community.
bigger than like our whole space, pretty much.
Yeah,
like
that's
the people
true.
who, you know what I mean?
But it's like Coca-Cola. The greatest marketing organization in the world is Coca-Cola, and their marketing strategy is put the branding Coca-Cola everywhere. In fact, it is a stat that almost every single person sees some type of Coca-Cola branding in their average normal day without even realizing it. It's subliminal messaging. Coca-Cola has covered the world in marketing. It is the single most effective marketing strategy in the world if you can afford it. Pokemon has that money. Pokemon goes, cool. Where are we not? We're not in this Web3 space. Put some branding
But they already have presence in Web3.
They don't, though. What presence do they have?
Well, just most recently, Polygon and their whole Charizard party.
Yeah, but that is Polygon
Plus
purchasing
everyone-
the card.
Everybody loves, but it's, what are we talking? We're talking about brand presence right now.
Yeah, but that's
who
not
cares who
Pokemon
bought what where?
actually. That's
Oh
not
my God.
Pokemon actually like putting
Yeah,
their stuff
I see
on
what he's
chain.
saying.
That was just
But they
Polygon
do.
doing
They
it.
have very publicly hired somebody to work as a, I don't remember what the title was, but it was like head of
Yes.
Web3 ecosystem development or something. That was like 2 years ago. Presumably that person has a team. Presumably that person or someone on their team was involved at some level with this kind of decision. I've got to imagine. So I feel like it's somewhere in the middle of those things.
You
I
got to
think they
remember
can
too
both
that
be true.
this IP is from Asia. They are
Japan's
much
huge into
different-
blockchain.
Yes, it's a much different attitude towards all of this stuff in Asia, specifically Japan and Korea, compared to all of us. It's much bigger over there, and we don't really see a ton of that. So I would hazard a guess that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than just simply let us take your brand and your IP and like do something with it for $20 million. I do not think that was a non-factor. I think 20 million is a significant sum, of course, even if you're $100 billion brand, but this is just one of those things that like, I don't think, I mean, we can agree to disagree. I'm speculating, but I would be very surprised if it was literally that and no one in that organization gives a single shit about anything else.
Yeah, here's my thing is it's on the official Pokemon.com website. The update says, like the fact that they're integrating this into one of their own like home properties on the internet makes me think that they're doing something, even if it's just a test, that they plan, if it's successful, to grow into something more. So you can collect these digital souvenirs, trade them as gifts, and you can get them by doing things in digital spaces and in physical spaces. So I think they're building something that either could totally go the way of the dodo if people don't like it, or that they could evolve into some other kind of shareable, wearable, tradable, playable thing. I think it's somewhere in the middle.
So this is the last bit I'll add on this. My pessimism on this does not stem from the things I've said. What it stems from is my lack of faith in Pokemon as a business, not as a business, but in how they run their business. They do not innovate. They never innovate. And if they do, they really don't try that hard. You know, they have a model. They go, cool, we just make some new Pokemon every now and again. We throw them in the show. We make some cards. We make these video games that are carbon copies of the same thing that have a whole bunch of glitches and bugs in them. We don't have to try hard because we know that everyone's going to buy them and we're going to make billions of dollars. Like, they are not an innovative company, which is why I do not have faith in them to actually really do anything in a big way in this space. Because they're like, like they have no reason to try because they'll put minimum effort into everything and still be the #1 brand in the world. They don't need to try, nor have they for 20 years.
I'm inclined to agree with that. And like Alex referenced, we had a great conversation with William Quigley, one of the co-founders of Tether, who was an early venture capitalist in the video gaming space. In the 90s, 2000s, he worked in titles and licensing at Disney. And his whole thesis is incumbent companies have never been the innovators, and they will never be the innovators because they just have too much to risk, because their ships are too big to turn quickly, and because startup companies who want to compete for the mind share they have acquired are necessarily going to move faster, break more things, and do the stuff that a company like Nintendo just won't be willing to do because their business model depends on the status quo, whereas somebody else depends on change. So I'm 100% on board with that argument.
But I would love to see Pokemon Go be real NFTs.
Damn,
that
would
would be so cool.
I You just have so many examples. My final point would be, I think you have so many examples of this going poorly that if Pokemon did not think that for some reason their scenario was going to be different, that it just simply wouldn't be worth the time and the energy. And even if this is an insignificant sum of money, and even if there are no plans and no one gives a shit and it was just a VC, like, sure, I'll take some money, fuck off. You still don't want to be in a position where someone from your company now has to take time away to go give interviews or comment or be unavailable for comment repeatedly in a whole bunch of press publications when this NFT gets the plug pulled on it, the same way that Artifact did. Because now, I mean, imagine a world where how stupid would you have to be if you were that big to take an entrance into something and then not care at all about it and potentially sink your ship before you even decide whether or not this is something worth investing in? Because what if this blows their expectations out of the water? They're like, holy shit, maybe we should have a couple more people working on this kind of a thing.
Well, I mean, that's what happened with Pokemon Go. Niantic was part of like a publicity stunt where they mashed Google up with like Pokemon on their maps. Then they went to Pokemon after the fact and were like, hey guys, you could buy us and we could build this for you. And so there is a world where incumbents don't risk themselves, but other companies risk, and then incumbents just buy it.
This is what I'm saying. Like, imagine a world where Porsche is like, guys, we're back. Who's buying that?
Yeah.
It would have to be a free mint. It would be wildly unpopular and it would probably fail because of how hardcore they effed that up the first time. And if they just came back with another entrance instead of like participating in something else first, then it would be a shit show. Nike, if they decided tomorrow, like, okay, guys, crap, sorry, this was a bad idea, we're going to turn the images back on, trust is gone. Like, we are not a forgiving industry. So I think, and there's way too much potential. Like, we wouldn't be sitting here if there wasn't incredible potential, flying around this thing. And I'm sure that there's someone at Pokemon who's smarter than we are, who all I'm saying is I would bet money that it was a more in-depth conversation than you guys feel like making $20 million. Who gives a shit what's happening?
Oh, they're going to make way more than 20 million. It's just them saying how much money is in crypto. I don't think this is going to fail. I think it's going to be wildly successful because it fits the Pokemon model. Do bare minimum effort, make millions of dollars. And they're going to stay in that do minimum effort bubble because that's what Pokemon does as a company. That's just where I'm at with it. They're going to make a bunch of money from this and go, that was cool. Let's release more medals. And they're going to do nothing different. That's how
the model.
I view them to run.
To be fair, that's the model. Magic does it. Pokemon does it. Like, that's what these giant TCG empires do. And that's what we want. I don't want Magic to come out and start being like, hey guys, we're going to take 2 years off of printing cards to write more books. Be like, go fuck yourself. Give me more cards. I want to buy cardboard. Like, I don't want Pokemon to change its model. To your point, they're nailing it. They're doing a great job. Expand it into a different industry and give us different versions of the same thing you're doing. I agree with you. I think that like it's bound to do well if it's honestly this kind of like hands off. So I think that's what we're missing from Web2 titans trying to enter in and be like, hey guys, all right, sit down, we got this. And then Sony,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Sonyism. No, what was it?
Sonium.
Sonium.
That was it. Sonium.
Sounds like something Iron Man would pull out of the earth.
Yeah. Smashing success, by the way.
Mm-hmm. It was not.
Let him cook, man. Let him cook.
Yeah, right.
So,
sorry.
If you've got a hot take on this, I know Tori mentioned Pal World, which I'm like so under-researched on. I saw Robert Steckler talk about their skepticism of Web3 gaming generally, and a lot of good takes. If you've got one, be sure to leave it in the comments. Let us know where we got this right, where we missed it, what we failed to consider. Alex, I'd like you to tell the folks about who's going to be joining us at the top of the hour, our guest Sinjin, and then I have a question here from ATV Bob that I'd love to address in the meantime, and if you've got one, you know where to leave it. So tell us about Sinjin Jung, who's joining us in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, so I met Sinjin through doing a charity stream with Sam Stefanina. He is a contributor to the Wolves DAO, where I'm not an official contributor, but I'm a big fan of them. Follow all of the stuff that they do. He is a game developer, designer. He's done a whole bunch of stuff. His current project is I think you're going to have fun with this. It's Meiji, which stands for My Angry Yakuza Girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
and he's worked on a whole bunch of other stuff. He contributes to several different DAOs. He's prolific, and I'm very excited to have him just to talk a little bit more about the inside of the gaming space, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all that kind of stuff. What he's working on. I haven't actually gotten a chance to hear too much from him about his project. He's always involved talking about other people's stuff. So I'm just stoked to have him. But if you've got questions about anything Web3 gaming related, conference side, he is based over in Asia most of the time, as far as I know. And so, this would be a great opportunity. I'm sure that he would have a really good take on the Pokemon stuff and just kind of the attitude towards Web3 over there on that part of the world that we just don't get to see. So I'm
saw
pretty stoked about
that
it.
he played a big role in introducing Texas Hold'em poker to the Asian continent generally and legalizing
cool.
poker in Macau.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Kind of
That's
cool.
awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Very cool.
It's an interesting feather in his cap, and I'm excited to have somebody who's a real OG in that way too. Like, it's always cool to see how people who are prolific in our space, what they did before. Like William Quigley working at Disney doing titles and licensing. I'm looking forward to that. We'll have him up in just a minute.
Hey, but he's on at the top of the hour,
He's
right?
going to be on
Yeah.
at the top of the hour, and if you want to do your homework, you can look it up at Sinjin, Sinjin, David Jung, Jung, on Twitter.
I'll only be able to be on for about 10 minutes of that before I have to hop off, sadly. But I know.
That's okay. In the meantime, we do have a little bit of a question from ATV Bob that I'd love to ask. When using OpenSea, should I use my Coinbase wallet, my MetaMask, or Wallet Connect? Is one better than the other for OpenSea? What do you think?
I've always used MetaMask with OpenSea, but
So have I.
honestly, I think it's probably one of those scenarios where there's really no right answer. It sort of depends. At this point, OpenSea indexes so many chains that I think if you're already using one wallet and they support the integration, then I don't think you would have to really worry about it that much.
Yeah, what matters more is that if I were you, I would not choose to use a wallet that holds my most precious stuff. It's free to create a wallet on any of those apps, and you could make a brand new wallet, send it $5 of Ethereum or other gas tokens for the chains you want to interact or collect or work on OpenSea with, and then name it your OpenSea wallet, my OpenSea wallet. Of course, if you're like me and you've got a wallet that holds some of your collectible stuff that is tied to your reputation, maybe it's your most robust social wallet, that is what I tend to use for protocols like OpenSea. I've done a lot of little NFT collecting over there, minting of this or that thing, and so I have a particular social wallet that holds some of those things. And honestly, if I lost it, I would be a little sad. But I mostly only interact with familiar protocols using it. While you're learning, might be best to do with a new wallet. And then once you get comfortable with it, maybe you have a collector's wallet like that you choose to interact with it. The most important thing, though, is to make sure that you feel confident using whichever wallet you are connecting to OpenSea with. If you need practice, then spin up a new one. Hope that helps. Thank you for the question, ATV Bob. Go ahead, Will.
What I do is whenever I have money that I take off of a wallet and sell or do whatever on the exchange, and then take that and I'm ready to go back and do some Web3 stuff, I always just spin up. I always spin up a new wallet. Just every single time. Just go.
Beautiful.
I don't know. I'm just gonna spin. I'll just do one real quick.
Yeah, I think that's the best practice. Anytime you're connecting to something new, you don't want to be doing it with a wallet that's got stuff you're afraid to lose in it.
Yeah, always good to be safe.
Yeah. So, Will, before the show, you said, I want to remind people of the volatile macro news we're set to get tomorrow and Thursday. You previewed it a little bit yesterday on the show, but since you do have to go, and I don't want to miss it, can you give us, I've got my pen and paper at the ready, all the things we need to be watching out for the rest of this week?
Can
as
I
it comes to
add
the market?
another point to enhance your answer, Will, with some more information for me, please?
No. Yeah, sure.
Go
Go
for it.
I have questions. Okay, so I was doing a lot of thinking and listening to a couple different podcast episodes yesterday, and I was curious just about the general theme that I'm hearing from a lot of these larger economists who are being asked about what all of these macro news means to you. I heard the first answer that I was like, I actually respect that answer, and I wanted to toss this in before you present us with the data, because you usually don't really present very many opinions with it. You kind of just, tell us the state of things. And I think this also kind of plays into your question to all of us the other day. Is this even worth continuing to update people on because of the rapid shifting of, events and news and situations and circumstances?
Tweets.
Yeah. And it was, so the general sentiment was basically just, there is no point giving a real opinion about what you should be doing in response to news XYZ, because by the time I finish my sentence, there is a 50% chance that something that makes it completely irrelevant has happened. And so instead, what you focus on is zoom out and look at the big picture. The fact that several things can be true at once, that right now we're in this interesting time where Bitcoin is doing very well and stocks are recovering. And is it a response to something improving, or just response to the fact that it cratered and lots of people got better entries or whatever? So I'm curious if you've seen, as you're looking at all of these different data points, is there anything that you could see or you could think of in the data that would lend a little bit more validity one way or the other, that this is just a reaction to a crater, or something has actually improved? Because from my perspective, I feel like we are kind of still on the all of the imports, container ship imports, are cratered. So I'm nervous about supply chain issues again, and we went through that not that long ago, and it was not fun for anyone who remembers. So I don't know, it feels like a very weird time to have Bitcoin doing its thing right now, and people in this bubble being send it past 100K, and then everyone else looking at the big picture being there's no reason for this at all.
I mean, I think it's just market manipulation. You can boil it down into several different mindsets. One is things have recovered because things got beat up so much. When things get beat up so much, markets don't go straight down. Markets don't go straight up. There are bounces along the way. So things are going up right now just because they were so oversold.
How big was the stock market bounce? From its big lemming to wherever it found at least for now, bottom, and then started to recover? Do you know how big that recovery has been? I can
tell you right now. It's up 14.39%.
Okay.
Which is a lot for the stock market.
That's a lot.
That's a lot for the stock market.
A lot for the stock market. But then, you have everybody also Warren Buffett, who are just still sitting on their cash, who know big picture. Things are pretty broken right now. I'm going to wait till things just aren't broken. Mm-hmm. Warren Buffett is also still invested very heavily in the market. He just has a lot of cash. But to your point, the macro news, the macro policy is different from the data that we're getting. Policy is what has been moving and being manipulated and changed back and forth and stuff out of the White House, that new policy. The data points are what you should actually use to read the market from a macro health standpoint, right? And that's your GDP, that's your payroll, that's your labor market, that's your manufacturing PMI information, that's your inflation data, right? Because that's the stuff that will clear up a lot of the noise of policy and say, cool, how are things actually? How are things holding up? And that clears up a lot of the noise. It's just that a lot of those data points, not all of them, are past looking. Some are future looking, like your manufacturing data that looks into the future, because if people are manufacturing a lot of stuff, they're expecting a lot of demand. There's a lot of demand. Economy is good. People are spending money. People are employed, yada, yada, yada. But, there's a lot of data that can help distract you from the policy and the tweets and the rumors and the conspiracies and all that kind of stuff, which is why we look at the data. So, when I was do I even report on this stuff anymore? What I was talking about specifically was stuff that is coming out of, various members of the Trump administration, because you're just seeing a lot of voices at the top of the United States say one thing, and within 12 to 24 hours, it's the immediate opposite scenario. So, that's
hence manipulation.
Yeah, hence manipulation. So anyway, I forget what your exact question was.
Honestly, it's just this idea that so many people are saying, and I'm seeing this sentiment sometimes here. It's just
I remember. Yeah.
That was the bottom. It's only up. And I just constantly, why Why do you think that? Like, if you pulled your head out of this bubble for 10 seconds and looked at the rest of the world, you have like a new war potentially emerging. You have an escalation to global conflicts that were existing before. You have the most tumultuous the U.S. economy's ever been. You have outside faith in investing in the United States at an all-time low. Why does anyone think that this was the bottom? And I am not an expert. I'm not an economist. I'm genuinely asking, can somebody who thinks that we bottomed and that this is only up from here, please tell me why you think that?
Oh yeah, that reminded me of. I wanted to say this when you had first asked your question, which is everyone who like immediately wants to believe that Bitcoin's decoupled from the stock market because it had 2 or 3 days that were different from the stock market. I think that's a lot of hopium. And then also getting a community that has historically believed certain things happen in a certain way to believe something and then totally rug them is the hedge fund's wet dream. Because hedge funds are the market makers right now in crypto with the ETF products. And they're the greatest market manipulators in the world. Way better than anybody at the White House. And so, like, what's the best way to totally remove liquidity from this community that believes things have to go a certain way and have like a rapid, like cult-like mindset? That's the easiest, people to just whip around back and forth to believe certain things and then rug them. That's the thing. Hedge funds are the greatest manipulators in the world. So whatever the crypto market all of a sudden thinks, pretty much expect the opposite, because the hedge funds are like, oh, we can just remove liquidity from these people super easily. Let's do that.
Yeah, especially if a bunch of shorts and longs are open, that's easy to see and track. And then why wouldn't you screw those people over when it's this easy?
Particularly when you're the hedge funds and you have more money than God to be able to move those markets in a certain way, right? Okay, we can just, here are a bunch of longs, cool, let's go squeeze that. Bunch of shorts, let's go squeeze that. Oh, hey, we've never made more money before in our lives.
And I think it's important to point out, because this has come up a lot. I got this question a lot. I posted a video about a profit-taking strategy the other day, and lots of questions about why not just hold, like, why would I take profits right now? Like, it's not up that much, or it's whatever, And my point is always, if what you're ultimately striving for is independence financially, but you are absolutely beholden to the numbers on your screen 24/7, and you're constantly stressing about where your investments are going and what your portfolio is going to do and how much you have at risk inside of a volatile asset, even if you have on paper way more money than your next door neighbor who is not doing that and is just like enjoying gardening, you are way less independent than that person who has significantly less money than you. So this is one of the problems that I see. And this screwed me over the first 2 bull runs. And that's why I am screaming this into the void as long as possible. I cannot even begin to tell you how much less stressful it is to have less money, but have it secure and not be stressed out about it 24/7 than it is to have a shitload riding on the potential that something goes up even more than it already has. There is the chance that it goes up. And if you would like exposure to it, that's why I never sell 100% of anything. I can't say that enough. But would you rather risk the whole thing on the chance that it's going to go up because you're worried that someone out there is going to make a little bit more than you? Or would you rather know that you secured something and you have actually improved your scenario? Because the definition of independence is not having more money. The example I heard from, oh my God, his name is escaping. I'll look it up. I feel like an idiot forgetting his name. He's a huge economic author. Oh my, holy shit. He wrote The Psychology of Money.
Bro.
Anyway, the point is, his point was just that
Google is free.
Google is free.
Yeah, but I'm
Morgan Housel.
I'm
Housel.
Fact check yourself, brother.
It's the point that he was making is that like his grandmother was way more financially independent, living on $1,700 of Social Security every single month, just because all she wanted to do was read her books and garden and take walks in the park, and she had a little teeny tiny apartment, and that's it. And every billionaire he knows is the most stressed person he's ever met.
Yeah. Or the Kurt Vonnegut story about being at the party of billionaires, and when he turned to his friend and said, I have something they'll never have, his friend said, what? And he said, enough. There's definitely a difference between being rich and being wealthy.
And I think especially like if we were to cut the privilege out of this conversation for a second and say like I think it's absolutely worth recognizing that like if you're in dire straits and you have a chunk and you're like really willing to risk it, that's a conscious decision that you're making, like where you're taking a specific gamble with a specific amount of money and you really don't care what happens to it. That's one thing. You know, my point is that if you are working on a position or you're investing or you're over invested or whatever, and you're sitting on the potential to like reward yourself a bit and take some stress out of your life and you don't do it, that's on you. I think you're opening yourself up to undue stress.
Alex Parsa says, is spitting facts even his mustache raising eyebrows? Making
One
eyebrows.
eyebrow specifically.
I absolutely love that.
And guys, remember, as Alex lectures all of you, remember, if you don't take some profits and then the markets turn down, Alex will show up at your house and scream at you face to face.
My dad can beat up your dad.
To take some profits.
Take your damn profit.
Oh, anyway,
no.
Yes,
here's
Morgan
the
Housel.
macro news.
Sorry, Will, that was correct. It was Morgan Housel.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
long
Morgan-
detour to macro
Morgan
news,
Housel.
Will. Save
Yeah,
me from
so-
myself.
Tomorrow we get a lot of very important information. Payrolls data, that's the less important, but that is information around like how much money people in the United States are making, right? Typically it's a sign of employment, unemployment. If people have jobs, they get paid. If not, not getting paid. Q1 GDP numbers, we're not expecting those numbers to be particularly wonderful, but we could be surprised. There's an opportunity there because tariffs weren't really in effect until March, and there were small tariffs and then got pushed outward. So we'll see. The Q1 GDP numbers could still be okay. We'll see. We're also getting Chicago PMI, which is manufacturing data out of Chicago, which we don't get that till tomorrow. We also get PCE inflation data, which is the most important inflation data that the Fed, Jerome Powell, looks at. We're also getting home sales information as well, but we do know that home sales are starting to come down. We're also getting earnings reports tomorrow for Microsoft, Meta, Robinhood, and a few other ones that are all very, very big. Could really shake up the stock market. And on Thursday, we get our weekly jobless claims data. What else do we get? Some other manufacturing data as well. And then earnings reports on Apple, Amazon, Eli Lilly, McDonald's, Reddit, Roblox, Airbnb, MasterCard, CVS. So, a lot of stuff that could really shake up the stock market. I'd say the most important thing here is Q1 GDP numbers, as well as PCE inflation data. But, if we start seeing weakness coming out of some of these really big tech stocks, like Microsoft, Meta, and Amazon, and Apple in particular, you're going to see markets start to immediately. And Q2 should probably be worse the next upcoming quarter because there will be a much larger effect of tariffs on companies like Apple and the like.
Damn.
And to that point, the whole weird thing about that entire situation is just like the button to end it all is literally sitting on one dude's desk, which just makes it incredibly tenuous.
Yeah,
I hope
and
that's
it's
the
just,
title.
And trade deals.
The button to end it all.
Yeah.
That should be a political cartoon.
It's there.
Ugh.
We just need to start getting some trade deals with some of our biggest trading partners, and then things get better. I just don't think that's going to happen until we start seeing rates get cut, because that's what Trump really wants.
Mhm.
And until we get that, I don't think he's going to be super serious about having like major deals.
What do you think really Jerome Powell is? Like, he's the squeen, the squeen.
He's the squeen?
Which is short for he's the stone Trump can't squeeze blood from.
He's the squeen. All of that was
He's the
condensed to
squeen. He's the squeen. And I'm curious at like what is the leverage that is going to get the blood from that stone, from that squeen?
Well, Jerome Powell's just purely data driven. So he's told us, I don't know.
He has said, yeah.
He has said we need to see the trade policy actually solidify and kind of know what that's going to be so that we can then analyze the data and the effects of that on the market and then make a decision. And like, that's the last time he spoke. That was like 2 weeks ago now when he spoke. And, since then, trade policy has remained stable. So if it does, and we get a couple data reports out, Jerome Powell and the Fed can finally analyze the actual effect of tariffs on the market and therefore inflation and the labor market, which are the two things the Fed cares about, and then start to get to the point where they can make a decision. So he's just going to sit back on his laurels and be like, cool, I'm not going to let the dollar inflate. We've been fighting that for a while. I'm not going to start cutting rates. And the labor market's strong, so I don't need to start cutting rates. So I'm going to sit back and chill and wait until I get the data before I make a mistake. So,
Yeah.
that's
Peter
it.
says Powell is the last line of defense. And I think in a list of first world people that I would prefer not to wake up as, he's got to be pretty close to the top. I mean, obviously there are a lot of other people that I don't want to wake up as, who don't get to wear a suit and tie to work every day. But on the list of people who have enough food in their belly, he's right up there. Could you imagine that? Just body swapping and you've got to walk out and say,
No, thank you.
good afternoon. Oh,
You know what? I think Jerome Powell
come for
loves
me.
his job.
I think he does too. And I am
think he
glad
loves his
that
job.
he's the guy there and it's not me.
Yeah,
That's
I
all,
think Jerome
you know.
Powell's the perfect guy for that position. He's like, dude, I love
agree.
this boring ass job, and you know what? I really love trying to maintain the health of the dollar and the labor market, and I am independent member of the government. I don't have to listen to fucking anybody.
It's
Damn
funny
right.
though to see how the attention paid to what the Fed chair says and thinks has shifted over the last 20 years. Because when I was a kid, or when we were kids, nobody was like hosting live shows desperate. Like young people were not hosting live shows desperately waiting to see what the Fed chair was going to say the next day. And I just like the nature of attention has shifted so much, and it's very interesting. Like it's both good and bad. Everyone has an opinion, but more people are interested in being informed, which is maybe the first step to improving.
I would say so.
Overall political literacy,
Hmm.
which is an epidemic.
Or
Okay.
financial literacy, one of the two, or both.
Literacy in general, another epidemic.
Literacy.
Literal literacy. I want to give acknowledgement of a couple questions before Sinjin gets here. Some rapid fire ones. The first one is asking us, guys, do you ever lose track of your wallets? And I know the answer is yes.
Oh,
Will,
God,
don't you have a
yes.
story about finding one recently and it had a little spare change in it?
Dude, I found $3,500 in a Solana wallet 3 days ago. I was like, I have three grand of stable coins in this wallet, and I have no idea how the hell they got there.
Right. Don't remember it? Glad I
Oh,
found
wait.
it.
Oh wait, yes I do. I know exactly how I got that. That was from you. That was for payment for something.
Oh,
I just,
well, there
I
you
just
go.
put it there and totally forgot about it. Now I just remember what it is. Okay, so hey,
It's beautiful.
wonderful.
Just
Yeah,
made
take
my
taxes
a
on
little
that.
bit easier.
Yeah,
My
thanks,
worst one
appreciate it.
was trying desperately to do something like native VeChain related years ago and getting like their wallet and moving all of my VeChain over there. And then years went by and I just kept having this thought, like, I swear I didn't sell that stuff. Like, where is it? Oh, well, I must have sold it. And then one day just being like, oh my God. I was just sitting on the couch and just had the epiphany, and I found and re-imported that wallet, and there it all was. It was not a, tremendous sum of money, but it was still, it happens. It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, I have never found quite that much, but I'm pretty sure I have significant amounts of money. Maybe in what happened with the Polkadot delegation? You remember when we delegated our Polkadot to one of the parachains like 5 years ago?
I sure do, Evan. I sure do.
I'm pretty sure I have some tokens that are probably worth
Nothing?
money. Well, I don't know,
Nothing?
man. I think they were worth very little when I got them, and I think I've never gotten them back. I think they're just out in the ether somewhere.
From which delegation? Do you remember?
I think it was Akash. Akala.
Yeah.
I'm
Akala.
in my mind, I'm hearing Akave, Akash, Akala, but it was Akala. That's who
Yeah,
I
it was
delegated
Akala,
my
yeah.
stake to. And it was one time, and I don't think I've ever gotten the DOT tokens back.
Well, they might be locked in the world's worst wallet, so good luck.
Yeah, they're there, and it's annoying.
I don't know, man. Okay, and the other question I have before we bring on Sinjin is, how is it that if you lost the internet, our folks want to know, you would use blockchain? Because we've talked about this a little bit on the show before. And if you want to give an overview, we can do it. Or if you just want me to give a quick and dirty answer, I'm glad to do it. But people are often surprised to learn that blockchain can work via just about any communication method. It doesn't have to be on the internet, even though that's a most efficient way of coordinating our talks. And I lost him. Okay. I will.
Sorry, was that to me?
Nope. It was just to
Okay.
everybody generally, but I will save me from myself. Okay, here's the thing.
That was perfectly
Blockchains-
timed to be the worst timing possible. And I want to leave that dead spot. So hopefully if you watch the video back, if you're hearing this on the podcast, go find the video of this and look at the dumbass look on my face when Evan paused and looked at me.
I thought I was using the appropriate tone of voice to let you know I'm coming to you for a question, but don't fret. I just want to give a quick teaser. I see Sinjin is backstage, so make sure Sinjin's got everything he needs. We're going to bring him up in about 60 seconds. I want to let folks know that blockchains can maintain their functionality even if you don't have internet, even if you don't have radio. The basic gist is you're going to use any alternate method of communication to orient for consensus in an asynchronous environment, meaning I'm online, you're online, maybe there's an EMP, maybe we're using like a common notebook or common station or something like that. But that's what it's all going to be about, is not all validators are going to be able to communicate to each other at the same time. If the internet went down, we would probably go to something like Bluetooth or radio because they reach far. It's easy to get everybody on a common channel. But in an event where a mesh network, some sort of physical media like a USB drive or radio, whatever, didn't work, you could use pencil and paper. If you know the math the protocol is designed with, then you can generate private keys. You can create transaction hashes. You can send and receive cryptocurrency, even with pencil and paper. How would it affect the price? Well, really, truly, the answer is that eventually when we came online, because we would come back online because we'd have much bigger problems than I can't send my Bitcoin if the internet that makes it possible for your grocery store or the power grid that supports your hospital went down. Like, we got bigger problems than that. Eventually, when the internet comes back online, all the asynchronous nodes will reconnect. They'll talk to each other. It'll be messy. But in the meantime, people will have the ability to transact because crypto is for cryptography, not just cryptocurrency. There is a lot more we could say about that, and maybe it's worth its own like dedicated YouTube video. I might have committed an erroneous sin trying to make this a 60-second explainer, but what you need to know is we'd have bigger problems. We could make it work. And that we are delighted to welcome Sinjin to. I came back to StreamYard and he went away.
He just left.
Okay.
Rip.
Oh, no.
Here he
is. Okay, great. Hey there, Sinjin. Welcome to the Rise Up Morning Show. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can. I'm just so sorry. I was in like a series of meetings out here in Bangkok, and yeah, and then I got stuck, and now I'm in a random Japanese restaurant where there's a private room. So here I am. Sorry, guys.
Perfect.
Oh, it was just a crazy day.
No, listen, don't even fret about it.
Welcome. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. We're glad you're here. And for those who are just tuning in, or if you didn't hear us before, our guest now is our friend Sinjin David Jung. He might have the best contrast between a profile picture on Twitter and how he's showing up after a day of meetings today. You got the suit and the streets represented. Sinjin, for the folks back home, we read a little bio earlier, but we'd love for you to introduce yourself in your own words. Tell them who you are, what you've been working on lately, and how we can get to know you a little better.
Yeah, so I'm a game designer. I've been in the gaming industry in one form or the other since '98 with esports and a thing called the World Cyber Games back in the day by Samsung. And then I've been a management consultant. I've worked for the Korean government in technology. I was the regional director of a company called Poker Stars out in Asia. When we launched in Asia, I legalized poker in Macau. I introduced online poker to all of Asia. That's not an exaggeration.
When I read that in your bio, I was like, whoa, this guy's like serious.
Yeah. I was
wild.
an advisor for the Chinese government for card games for a couple of years. And and then I decided to open up a video game studio in Web3 because I was in crypto since 2017. I was trying to do a microfinance thing to absolve my sins for all the pain I've caused in online gaming and gambling and all the rest. It didn't work out because people like to degen, even the poor. And then I uncovered Axie Infinity as a marketing channel. And then I realized, fuck, I know this. and I ended up breeding for about 2 months, and I realized, or 2 weeks, and I realized what was wrong with it. And I'm like, let me get back in the game. So I called a couple of my buddies out of retirement, and then we opened up the studio back in 2021. And yeah, so it's been hell ever since, but enjoyable hell. That's it.
Excellent read in.
That's such
Yeah.
great. That's so great.
Yeah, and I
So I
love the
was-
Avengers style return. Guys, we're going back.
Yeah, it's game development is so crazy because I don't think anyone really retires as a game developer. You kind of just burn out or fade out, or you just give up and you're just like, screw this, and we're gone. Yeah.
That was actually one of the things I wanted to get your insight on, just given your unique perspective as someone who's actually worked as a designer. So I was talking a little bit about how you and I met through Sam and the Wolves, and obviously you're working on your own project, but one of the things that we've run into a lot, right, is the burnout rate of game devs combined with the unforgiving nature of Web3 as an industry, combined with how many swings at the ball you usually have to take to get a game that works out and is successful. And just all of these things kind of running into themselves, trying to figure out how like every game that comes out just like has to succeed and has to stick around. And I can only imagine that as a designer, that is a nightmare to navigate.
Not really. I think like there's like this kind of first principles approach in some ways, and I don't mean to be super nerdy about it, but like, what is the 10x value of what you're solving in Web3 that you would want to be in Web3 than Web2, right? And if you have kind of clarity in that, then you're designing for that specifically. And then like, that would be really for me the open economy model. And then what game does that really fit into? And then so there's this kind of two parallel paths, right? We looked at an MMO and then we like spec'd it out 90 pages, and then we realized it's going to take us 4 years plus to make, right? So then we actually pivoted to doing our current game, which is a turn-based third-person shooter, which doesn't exist in the market, but it worked for what we wanted to do. And then as a PC game developer, then you spec it out to the point where, yes, this is something that makes sense and we're going to execute it. The problem in the Web3 space is that number one is that a lot of designers are not designing for a solution to a problem. They're designing for a functionality. And then they're not serious game designers because they're always shifting based on meta for fundraising. I mean, I've had a bitch of a time. Like I basically funded more than like 80-90% of our company, right? We spent like 5.5 million, 5.7 million at this point, including marketing. I put in about 4.2 million. Okay. Now, the reason I did that was because I actually had arguments with VCs way back in 2021 when we started. And that was like the heyday. I mean, we got like crazy valuations, like $40 million valuations, so on and so forth. And I said, no, because like you guys basically like, if I spend the next 2.5 years making this game for like a few million, and then because of your tokenomics experts who know shit all about open game economies, tanks the token, and that's the incentive for the token. I just blew 2.5 years for like what, $10 million? You shouldn't be in this space if you're just going for like 4 or 5 or break even. It's either really asymmetrical. Either you're going to be legendary and like create a new industry, or you're going to make a fuck ton of money that's more than your comparables in Web 2, right? Other than that, why would you be in this hellhole of an industry, right? And I think that's the real distinction. Yeah, you got like 98% of peons who want to make a quick buck with gaming as a narrative and who don't know fuck all about game designing. And then you got like the other 2% of like Web 2 designers who do know a lot about games, but they haven't really grasped the gravity of what an open game economy really entails. Yeah. And then there's maybe 1% who have just grinded all the way through, maybe with validation, maybe without, but we're kind of seeing those games come to market now. Yeah. So I don't know. Everyone thinks I'm a fucking asshole hater, but I'm not. I'm just
you're just realistic.
Yeah.
This is exactly what honestly kind of pushed me out initially from Web3 gaming as a career path, because that was one of the avenues I really felt strongly about trying to go down, only because I had an idea and I really wanted to see if it would work. But we went into it knowing exactly what you said. I am not a game designer. I have never built a game before. It is insane to value me at like success already. And so what we were trying to do was like find a grant. And we had written the proposal. It was like a relatively small amount in the game development world for like a year of runway to get this thing going and like hodgepodge some crappy MVP together to just see if anyone even thought it was interesting. And that grant, just every time we got a new like approval, like, yes, let's have the talk. Yes, this sounds good. It always walked into when token, here's how much money we want to give you. And I was always just like, I can't even begin. It was that exact conversation. I was unemployed, not making any money, could really have used it. Looking at someone waving, here's a $300,000 paycheck for you. All I need in return is a token with your name and your picture on it. And full send. And I'm just like, dude, I would be insane to take that deal because I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. Like, I would way rather have a mentor like sit down with me and like, let's pick this thing apart and try it. But that was never an option. It was just like, who cares? Send it, tokenize something, and then get the hell out of here. Give me the next
But
one.
Alex, that was actually the right play because the real product was like gaming as a narrative to sell a token, right?
Yeah.
And then the option was, if you were a real game development studio or you were really going to try it, because I'm not against like anyone being a first-time game developer, not at all. I mean, everyone's got to start anywhere, and people have a talent for like a lot of people in film are great at game development because it's basically the same thing. It's just a different medium, right? Like, so like, it's totally fine to go for it. And like a lot of people say, you know, like shots on goal. So you get the money, you pivot, whatever, so on and so forth. But what I'm going to say is that like, that would have not been the worst play. In some ways, I kick myself for not taking the easy money because everyone ended up failing on those models anyways that I was arguing with the VCs weren't going to work, and we would have had the runway to still build out what we wanted to build out, right? That being said, I mean, like the mentality though is that it's not like you go in and you build a game and you cannot not be inspired, because like if a game is meant to be entertainment and a game is supposed to have longevity, that has to start with some level of authenticity and inspiration, or else it's going to be blah, you know? And if entertainment is not driving transactions, then, and your economy isn't like totally thought out yet, which, you know, takes a lot of work, you're not going to go really anywhere. But I think now with the AI tools, like doing an MVP for basically like, I don't know, a subscription or even free, it's like, you know, it's definitely there. But you'll see, just like when Fortnite came out with UAFN, you know, whatever creator tools, and everyone's like, oh, everyone's going to build like all this shit. And nothing happened because it ain't the tools that matter, man. It's the inspiration and the love that really matters. And that's why, you know, all game developers like have a love-hate relationship doing this shit because it's so fucking hard, but we love it. So, yeah.
I have a question for you, Sinjin, in that regard, and talking about like designing economies inside games or even in Web3 gaming generally. How should people think about it? We had a comment from one of our friends, Music Man, who said, are people going to combine gambling and gaming? Are they going to start to bet on players who have their own tokens? Are AI systems going to help us design malleable dynamic incentives in real time so that our economies can adjust based on player activity? How do you see that? And especially for people who may not be as experienced as you but want to take swings at the bat, what could designing a game or designing a game economy look like if you are bootstrapping?
Yeah, I would say that this is not an entry level like task. Okay, designing like like a level up like system or a weapon system or like you know, a damage system, you know, like that's like entry level. This is like post PhD Nobel literate level of design, right? So like for instance, like very first thing is like if you take a really step back, right, and you're talking about incentives or whatever like that, you like are not talking at the right level. You got to talk at the economic level, right? So like in an economy, what is the production? Right? That's the very first thing, right? And then the production being like the game content, or what is it that's going to drive transactions? Because transactions are the heart of every economy, right? And then you'll talk about incentives to drive that transaction, right? But if you don't have that revenue loop, or you don't have like the transactions where it's creating value, right, in the economy, then you're totally shit out of luck. So like everyone who developed for PDE, like play to earn, they basically made a game loop on player incentives, right? But you're just basically making a game for free tokens. That's it, right? So, but if you zoom out and you say, okay, I'm going to make a mechanism for player incentives that's going to lead into the next game loop for expanding out the game's ecosystem or like economic activity, then that's where you're starting. But like people's idea of what the economy is a very simple transaction when you need a full framework, right? So like one thing that every game developer that's a game designer worth their salt will always say this, right? We aren't developing processes, we're developing systems that have processes in it. That's like a norm. Like you talk to maybe a hyper casual like mobile game developer, that's not what they do. They have project managers or whatever. But for any like video game, what are the systems are we creating that can scale and grow and absorb or utilize whatever the economy is giving to us, right? And so at that level of thinking, let's say this, okay, for our game particularly, okay, we have an entry level like revenue model. So like you pay your entry fee and you get a you know whatever your reward, okay? So the revenue model is very straightforward, right? But we get the revenue in our own cryptocurrency. The rest of the system is how do we use the cryptocurrency so that it has enough utility so people just don't kind of cash it out? Or how do we use the cryptocurrency that people want to use it in the game so it stays in the game persistently because it's being quote unquote invested into the game to create more content, right? Yeah. And
As
so like
opposed to
on
just
and on and on.
extraction. Yeah.
Yeah. So like if you're not thinking at that level, you're already drawing dead. Right? Absolutely. I mean, Axie Infinity was a fantastic acquisition tool. Now, if they had something to bring in all these players who are acquiring these players and making all these Axies and all this other stuff and utilize the SLP in more than just one way, it could have gone more of the distance. But there was only one use case for the SLP, was breeding and then selling, right? So once you bred enough, all was selling, right? So there wasn't a system in place for the economy to grow. But there's only two games that possibly could have the easiest, like, or three games that are really easy for it. I would say it's trading card games, MMOs, and a game that has a core and meta gameplay. Yeah, but out of those ones, like, oh man, good luck, buddy.
But you're saying that because they have figured out this question of like, what are people doing? How are they transacting?
Exactly.
And then what are the incentives?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's already a scalable economy that's already inherent in an MMO and like a Clash of Clan games where you want to invest at the clan level, or a TCG where you want to have multiple decks for multiple competitions, so you want to invest in your gaming assets, not just a single sword, right? Yeah. Like that sword that could be shared in your clan, that could help you level up, that could get other like areas of commerce. So the simplicity just can't be there, because like what we're really doing here is like seriously post PhD game design, right? And I think that was a disconnect there where people just thought, okay, we're just going to do DeFi stuff, and DeFi stuff works until there's no confidence,
right?
And then it just all unravels.
Excellent.
Cool.
I was curious. So we talked on Simplified yesterday. The topic came up about in-game economies and economy building, and you kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah,
the intricacies of building it, like all in all, but also it's like rather simple. Like when you think about it in nature, just the idea of like there has to be some sort of supply of whatever product is that needs to be thought about, and then some methodology for exchange, and then what exactly is the medium of exchange inside of the game. And honestly, there's really not that many other parts of it. And RuneScape is a perfect example, because look at how it evolved over the years, right? From chopping down trees and selling the wood individually to another player, all the way up to what the grand exchange is now, with like literally price charts of tracking trends in different goods and the inflation rate of magic logs compared to U logs and like all this kind of stuff. But all of that was born then out of like just natural evolution of the game. And I'm curious, given like Cambria's popularity right now and the way that they did gold with the Gold Rush program, I feel it kind of makes me feel like old school RuneScape again, like a little tiny bit. And I'm curious just if what your take on like in-game economies, because that was the part that I thought Web3 could just like really bring home. Like if I think about something that at this point deserves to be a cryptocurrency, it's RuneScape Gold, because it has an inflation model. It's got like all these kinds of things that you can track and follow and all that sort of stuff.
Okay, so there's two parts to it. Okay, so part number one is that like when everyone was in game design and economy design at the beginning in 2021, every stupid ass VC would call me and say, "Have you run it through Machinations?" Right? And I'm like, "Are you if you guys don't know what Machinations is out there, machinations.io, it is kind of a economy modeler where you set it up like a flow chart, and then you can basically set like, you know, how many players are playing, what they're gonna like you know, buy with, and then see how your economy flows or doesn't
We do
flow.
know
Okay.
this. Yep.
Yeah. And it is a great tool for a snapshot, and it's a great tool for like individual like economic loops that are in a closed system where certain things are fixed. The problem is that when you don't have very many elements that are fixed because it's an open economy, right? Like the price of wood changes based on supply and demand. The price of time to chop it, the weapons change, and the degradation changes and stuff like that. And the biggest thing is like scale changes what the economy is. Because at the end of the day, when we were all cavemen, we didn't have money. But when some guy had too many fish, he was like, "Oh, Ogo, I got too much fish. I want to trade you, and I don't want that lamb thing. Can we trade these sticks instead so I can get an IOU on it?" Right? So the economy can be very simple. And once it starts to scale, then certain more elements can kind of come into it, right? So like I think like the first point is like what's really hard about modeling it is scaling it, right? And the scale will change with different and the elements and everything else like that will change, you know, as it gets to scale. The problem with RuneScape has always been is that the way that the model works is that it gets inherently broken at a certain scale, or when there's too much freedom where there's not a very fixed cost, right? Like a fixed peg cost. So there's another issue is that until you get to scale with certain economies, you don't know how much flaws that they have or how unrobust that they actually are or how fragile they actually are, right? So like certain economies, like the production or the scale at which it is to absorb the tokens may not be designed properly enough, right? It might not be robust enough to actually absorb it, right? So that's another issue as well. So okay, you do an MMO and you do like Cambria, and it could definitely work right now, right? But what happens if it scales to 100,000 players and it's unplayable because the P2E is just the PvP is just fucking crazy, right? And then only the top 10% of players can actually make money. Then suddenly you lose 90% of your players, right? So like in those kinds of situations, right? Like certain economies can only scale to certain amounts as well. Like if you look at like EVE Online, like they've had like what the same like 20,000 players for the last 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Why hasn't it gone even bigger?
Yeah.
Because like the economy can't like whatever, or the amount of time and effort and return for it, whatever like that. So it's a very multifaceted issue, and sometimes you don't know you're wrong until you hit the scale. Yeah.
Well, hey guys, I actually got to hop off for a client call of my own in a bit coming up. So Sinjin, it was nice meeting you here. I do have a question that I've put in the Discord, Alex Nevin, to ask
Got
you,
you.
Sinjin. So I'll come back and watch on the recording. So I'll see you guys
Super.
later.
Cheers.
See you, Will.
Man, see you, Will. So Will's question here in the Discord was about your strategy. And I wanted to take a second just to share my angry Yakuza girlfriend. If you're listening to the audio and you cannot see us right now, I've got the screen share going. You can find the project at MAYGNFT on X. But Sinjin, what's your like go-to-market? How are you telling the story of this game, of this experience to attract people here? And what's worked, what hasn't?
Okay, so we're launching literally in 2 days, right? So we finished our beta in November, and then so we're like set up the marketing. I'm doing it super old school, okay? We're not on Steam, we're a PC game, so we're doing live event activation. So we have our own like 9,000 foot gaming exhibition space in Bangkok, and we're doing live esports amateur tournaments that we're sponsoring, and then we're literally onboarding players to the whole shebango. Like, I'm never shy that we're a Web3 game, but I don't think that the Web3 players right now are like really gamer enough. I would rather onboard Web2 gamers into the space with a kind of new, fresh perspective. And in Asia, it's not as negative as it is in the West, right? So why am I doing this? Because back in the day, online poker in 2022 had the same problems as crypto. Like banks would not accept, deposits. So this entire thing like NetTeller or virtual credit cards and like PayPal and stuff like that, or like this derivatives, were actually born from the online gambling or porn or whatever online poker industry.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. So that your virtual MasterCard or Visa, that was because of gambling innovation, because we needed to circumvent like your banks not wanting to make a deposit. Yeah. So if you check out like the entire fiscal fiasco with Full Tilt back in the day, Black Friday 2020, 2011, you can just Google and you can see, right? But there was a lot of education. And sometimes like the poker stars would be in like US dollars, and so Aussies would have to do Forex to get their money out and like get a hit on a VIG, and they would have to go through like 3 OTC guys to make it happen if they want to put their money in or out of the thing, right? But online poker was so freaking hot, people would jump through hoops of fire and knock down walls to play it, right? And Axie Infinity, when you first started playing Axie Infinity, it took no less than 17 freaking clicks to get onboarded. But people did it because the game was so like innovative and the opportunity was there. And I think we've really lost that. And though for our game, because we're very Web3 like forward, right? I reckon as long as we get 1,000 hardcore players to play it and really understand the game and it works, then that will percolate and that will expand organically. And I think that's the only way to go, because at the end of the day, if you get a Web3 player and he's mercenary and he came for the airdrops and he fucks off after, right? What was the value of that? Nothing, more liability, right?
Yep.
So yeah, that's our approach. And it comes from my time when I was in Macau, and we had a poker room at the Grand Lisboa. It was like 22 tables in a multi-billion-dollar casino, and I would fly everyone out from Asia, do like a $250-1 million tournament guarantee, and I keep them for 2 weeks. I would brainwash them, fill them up with merchandise and affiliate deals and like banking contacts, and I would send them back off to whatever country they wanted to go to, and then they would run satellites in their countries and bring them back to Macau like 2 months later, right? And we made like 40 million US in like less than 30 months.
Old school.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
That's a really fun. That's a fun model though too. It makes you feel like the game is. It's almost like the game is just a small part of the bigger game that you're playing. To be part of this community, part of this like economy. That's kind of cool. I like that.
But also lifestyle. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you have NFTs in your game, like why are you not going for an IP lifestyle brand thing? We kind of just gave up on it just because everyone's just like whatever flustered. But like Pudgy Penguins, right? It's doing like the best in the NFT space, right? But imagine like if a game had a hit game with NFTs, right? Everyone always clones Counter-Strike, right? And like how big the market is, 4.5 billion, right? But it's only 4.5 billion because Counter-Strike is the nuts OG game.
Yeah.
Right? You can't give me any other examples. So if the one example is the exception, that's not really a formula, man. That is really the exception. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what we were talking about yesterday was one of my points about to take it back to Cambria for a second about why that's exciting is that if you think about like the amount of pull that you need to go out of something into something that is in the same genre, like when you're talking about appealing to people with a new game, I always think of a couple examples, right? Like I need something that is so freaking different that I've never played anything like it and I want to give it a try. And if you can hook me, great, I will stay there. If it's similar, so if you're making a new MMO, a new shooter, or a new roguelike or anything like that, it's got to have the perfect balance of like nostalgia to the thing you're taking me from, and then some individual unique hook to keep me in the new place. And I feel like that was the part about Cambria that was exciting is I just get so many old school like dungeon crawling RuneScape vibes with the economy and the idea of like harvesting a finite resource and stuff like that. But the integration of something more Web3, I own it, leveling up that thrill that you get from the wilderness of like risking what you have. That could be a hook, I think, that keeps a lot of people in, because Tarkov is super popular and that's very risky to play. RuneScape, when they took the wilderness away, people revolted and they had to bring it back because there was nothing else like it in any other game, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it is so tough though. I think the place that Web3 misses that mark all the time is exactly what you just said. Bring in the mercenary with the allure of some fat airdrop and then hope that for some reason they do what they've never done before and hang out with you after you pay them.
Yeah, and they definitely won't.
Right, why would they?
Yeah. Well, there's like, I think there's a couple of great points that you mentioned there. I think at the end of the day, what we would call is like evolution. I mean, like all like creative functionality creative like progress is usually like two different points that were associated in some ways to create like some next level of interaction or gameplay, right? And I think the other thing though too is like, like right now, like for PC games, okay, probably around 70% of people's times are playing games that are 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years old, right? So you only have 30% of time to like enact and bring them over, right? If you're operating on a slightly better functionality like level, you're never gonna be able enough to like replace one of those hardcore games, right? You gotta go for broke. You gotta give them an entirely new experience that then they can choose, A or B, right? Not like A is replacing B as a substitute, right? They gotta make a new choice. And so how hard is that? It's so hard. It's hard for that, like in IP and movies and everything like that. But if you don't take that risk, right, you're really drawing dead. Absolutely. And people like, the thing is in Web3, right? Because it's so investment based, okay? Investors want something that's easy to understand that they can all get behind and say, yeah, that's a great idea. That's what we need next. Okay. Innovation doesn't work like that, man. Innovation is like, you say something and people say, you're really nuts. That is never going to work. And out of 200 people, one person says, maybe that could work out of 200. Right? That's what real innovation looks like. That's what real like brand building looks like, right? Because if everyone has consensus at the beginning, that means that when you actually launch it, it won't have any impact because they kind of know what to expect because they think financially it's going to work out, but it never does. Yeah. So that's another issue because of the investment focus.
Yeah. Which you hear people like Ben Brody talk about all the time when he says things like, if you preview the idea for a game and the response is you're out of your goddamn mind, that's an awful idea, it's like way more likely to do better than a game where everyone's like, I might check it out, like no one's going to check it out. But if everyone thinks it's the stupidest thing ever or the worst idea ever or whatever, and you can build that like immediate culture of like someone hates this, it's way more effective to bring in those people who are like, well, I'm going to try it out of obstinate defiance and then find something in there that clicks, which again goes back to your original point of 1,000 hardcore players versus 100,000 or 1 million like whatever players.
Yeah, because then you're just paying for those acquisitions anyways, right? And what you need to have is retention that goes past like the metrics. At the end of the day, right, for PC games specifically, right, why do people play it? It's player reviews 100%, right? And like if you have your friend who says, like Evan says, yo, Alex, you gotta play this game with me. It's the fucking nuts. I can't think of one video game which I played because I saw the advert or the trailer.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm trying.
It's only because like a hardcore game that you love. Yeah. Your friend said, let's play the cafe. Yeah.
The only one for me that I played off of the commercial and not because someone I knew was playing it was Destiny when the D1 alpha originally dropped, but to then argue with myself, the only reason I gave it a shot was because I was a Halo maxi and I knew that Bungie was doing it, and so I had the.
It was like having a friend referral. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So like at the end of the day, there are going to be the early adopters who are going to early adopt, and if you convert them into hardcore fans, it will happen. It will happen. I think the other issue with Web3 is like if you look at like Web2 like game metrics in terms of how long they last for, right? A hit mobile game, how long is it really going to last for? 8 months before it's unprofitable to you. And then a hit PC game with like downloadable content, right? 2 years, 2.5 years, right? And then we have these NFTs and we're saying ownership, right? But if the game doesn't exist in 2.5 years, what's the value of the NFTs? It's nothing. Like, people are not logically thinking through what they're saying the benefits are. Because if you want the NFT to be worth something, that game has to be structured as a forever game. It has to not have a limited amount of downloadable content. It has to be infinitely scalable.
Which is
right?
tough. Real tough.
It is tough.
Yeah.
It's so tough. And you know, I came to realize that, like, when I'm talking to like some people and you know, partners, the partners that really want to partner with me are guys who have like already, they're working at a scale. Like, they're in a conglomerate or they're in a big company, and they see what scale really looks like. And everyone who doesn't really want to partner up with me, right? They just think like, hey, the hype and momentum is not enough to like sell the story, right? Not realizing that you could sell the story, but it ain't gonna last if, you know, the game doesn't last, you know?
Yeah. That's, I mean, Destiny ran into that because after 10 years, right, they tried to end the Light and Dark saga. And so story-wise, right, they like had this big momentous story wrap up, but then functionally inside of the game, they knew that nothing could really change that much. And so like lightly altered the seasonal model and just kept going. If you like missed that announcement and came back 6 months later, as far as you were concerned as the player, nothing changed.
Yeah.
But from them, they tried really hard to like wrap it up with a bow and tie it off and go do something else. But people revolted. So it's like, oh, I guess the lights stay on forever.
So what do you think then, Sinjin, about, they talked about it on Simplified yesterday, and this is something I've been a big fan of, is like temporal experiential games. The example that they used was Crypto the Game. It's very different from like a, you know, a place you go, a game you play, but it's hyper that. 10 days, we're all here, everybody's watching, making micro content. It's cheaper to build and produce. It gives people a break, but when they're in it, man, they're in it. And then when they're out of it, they're wishing they could be back in it because there's enough time. How do you feel about, you know, that's a different kind of lifestyle? That
I think it's
that kind
fantastic.
Of thing has longevity? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think battle passes kind of meet that criteria if the people are devoted to the platform and will come back. Okay, so like, I've been a game designer and a game executive, and I will tell you that that's rare. Okay, the people have been both. Okay, and as a game executive, I'm going to tell you, man, like, how are you going to pay for the acquisition to re-bring them back?
Yeah.
If they're not on a set platform, right? Because the attention's gone, right? I liked it. Unless it was such a great experience, I'm going to mark it in my calendar. I'm going to come back, but hopefully, like, I'm going to come back and nothing's going to distract me on that particular day to start on that particular day so I can maximize that 10 days.
Yeah.
Right. So when people talk to me about like, why don't you do another online poker site or whatever like this, right? And there's been countless amount of Web3 crypto poker sites. And I've pretty much, at the beginning, people have come to me and said, do you want to consult or what do you think or whatever like that, right?
You've seen
and I've
all
spoken
of them.
to a couple of these founders. Yeah. And then, you know, I've talked to these founders and I'm like, this founder has no idea what he's talking about. Right. And that's pretty much across the board because they think that poker doesn't work in Web 2 or hasn't been popular because people cannot verify the transactions online in terms of the randomness. No, that's not the reason. The reason is because the acquisition cost got so high that it was parity to like online casinos, and you'd make more money putting them to online casinos.
Interesting.
For instance, 2002, the CPA cost per acquisition was around $75. By 2012, it was approaching $300 to $400.
Wow.
Okay. So when you approach somewhere around $600 for acquisition, right, the only way you're going to make money from them is putting them to casino game. And that's where the top off happened, right? But the marketing costs were getting that high, right, in order to do marketing. So there's two types of marketing. There's like affiliate marketing where you're using agents and referral codes and you're giving them like a rake back. So your profitability suffers. So standard rake back, let's say anywhere between 25 and 35% of what they're raking commission. Okay. And then you have mass marketing where you sponsor the WSOP, you sponsor, the European Poker Tour, you sponsor the APP Poker Tour. That's what we did at PokerStars. And then you're putting up front $15 to $17 million getting TV distribution, and then you're acquiring customers at 15 cents, which makes sense. But the problem is that when there's more competition in poker and in casino, once the player loses money, they're out. They're no longer a player. Okay, you die like 1,000 times in Destiny, you're still the Destiny player, right?
Yeah.
But in casino or poker, once you lose your money, you're gone. So you have to spend money retaining them. So your cost to have a player is initial acquisition fee, right? and then redeposit, and then loyalty acquisition fee, and then redeposit again if they lose their money. So in actuality, it ends up becoming cheaper to get new players to come in, right? I'm just showing like the actual real costings for some of these ideas. It's just so impractical. It's just like if you have a hyper casual game and then you're going to keep a player on for like 2 or 3 years, it's impossible. Yeah. Because your acquisition costs and the amount of people who are going to be interested in that particular hyper casual game is going to drop, that it's just no point to do it, right? So, you know, the economies of scale and acquisition matter a lot.
So I know, Sinjin, that you write and speak and share about this a lot. Twitter is obviously a place where your thought work lives, but where else should people check you out, find your work? Where would you want people to go if they've enjoyed what they've heard today?
I've devoted myself to Twitter, and I've given up trying to tweet properly because I'm just too old and like slow.
I saw your company refer to you as a boomer. I was like, oh man, come on. No way. You're too cool.
Technically, I'm a Gen X, but I'm 50 this year in a few days, actually. So Twitter is the only place. I tried Medium, but like there's no like whatever. When I was younger, obviously I blogged. I was on like Reddit and stuff like that. Do not try to find me on those things. It's very embarrassing what I wrote when I was, 20 years ago. Like I would never disclose what my actual gamer name back was in the day, which is all under. It would be super embarrassing. So I just do long form on Twitter, and like it's crazy because like some of the content I think is pretty good, but like the algorithm like faces you out in 12 hours, right? Mm-hmm. But if you were to like look at my rants, I don't know, I told my team to like compose all my rants and put in Medium. But also I've kind of gotten used to like this very temporal, in the moment kind of reactionary talk rather than like writing it as a book, because I think, the biggest problem when you get older is that you become obsolete in technology 100%. Right? The guys who are in their 20s and 30s, they're the movers and shakers because they see the opportunities and they don't see all the risks and the scaling issues, because it doesn't really matter at this point. The industry is not fully established, right? And communicating with people who are much younger when you get much older is impossible. It's like 2 different languages, 2 different structures. I can't imagine what a 20-year-old is thinking or how they process information nowadays, So I have forced myself to stay in the trenches, getting my head beaten in and looking like an ultra boomer. So just, if you want to read boomer rambling and you've gotten enough of my ranting or haven't gotten enough of my ranting on this show, go ahead and check it out. But I'm embarrassed by everything that's online at this point. Yeah.
No, I think our audience loves it. I think they love the energy, they love the experience, and I have heard you speak in spaces before, but I think that you're good in spoken word. I think you're a lot of fun to listen to.
Thank you. Because I'm in Bangkok, so like all our contacts are in the US. So I'm doing like gamified at like 4 or 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm like either drunk or like spaced out or like half exhausted, and so I'm really making an effort, right? And sometimes like I hear myself, I'm like, oh my God, I really am not making sense. I gotta like, inject that caffeine into my veins. But thank you. I appreciate it.
No, it's really just because, as is becoming more and more apparent every day, the overhyped hopium bullshit nonsense content really doesn't have an audience. Like everyone's over it. It's way more enjoyable and educational to listen to someone who has experienced something, tell you the downside and like what the problems are, and then like here are potential solutions. This is why XYZ misses the mark, instead of just like blowing smoke for the entire time. It's just straight up not valuable.
You know what the problem with that is that when the older founders come in this space, they're like, this is so stupid, and then they say things, but they say it in a very patronizing way, and in a very like, you guys don't know shit, you guys are so stupid. And then the other side is like, then there's like this kind of like pity me complex. I know what's going on, but I'm not getting funded. Poor me. All these other peons are getting funded or whatever like this, right? And to say that I didn't go through that phase, obviously I did at a little, to some degree at the beginning, right? I think what I came to realize is that like I'm not going to be listened to for what I write, but as long as I write it and I'm consistent with it, then whoever does kind of get it a little bit beforehand, that's great. But like, it's kind of like as a record there that like, like once we get to that point where people mass realize, because everyone's experience is what their experience is, and they're going to come to an understanding when they come to the experience, like understanding, then at that point, maybe, you know, like people will look back and say, okay, well, Sinjin actually did make sense. And then me just being there saying it like clicks right away, rather than like from starting from zero and then, hey, I'm Sinjin and you should listen to me because like whatever, right? Rather like, hey, I've been saying this same shit over and over again for like 3 years, you peons, and like now finally you get to be the good peons and in the, you know, kingdom of Sinjin, and you know, my mighty castle with Zelda and Link and the rest, and we can all be happy now, you know. And you know, just being there for the community, I think is the role that like older founders should do without expectation, you know. That's my take on it anyways.
I think it's
you know,
killer,
and I am so mean to people though too.
Yeah. You know, everyone in our chat, we have a community at all ages all around the globe. And so there are a lot of Gen Xers. There are a lot of early happy birthdays to you from people who self-identify as boomers and people who are young and appreciate you for sharing the experience. So I think you're doing a great job. And I would love, I know Alex is right here with me. We'd love to have you back sometime. Maybe put a panel together and just talk it up. Once my angry Yakuza girlfriend is really out in the world, then maybe we can hear about all the success and, I don't know, deal a hand of poker together or something. But is there anything, Sinjin, that before we send you on your way, I know you got to go, is that you wanted to talk about that you didn't get to, that you think we need to know or want to leave us with to chew on for next time?
Oh my gosh. So like,
I put you on the big spot, man.
No, you know, like Gen X people, like we are like, we like to like tell people stuff, but we don't like to tell people about our stuff because it seems like really unauthentic and like, so we hate shilling, right? We hate there's that entire thing back
like
in the day where it's like, but I'll say that, you know, we are launching our launch build like in a couple of days from now, and then we're going to do it public open like testing for like 3 weeks, and then open up the marketplace, and then open up the economy in phases. But we're done. We're in the market, and I'm so thankful to our community and our NFT holders who have never seen the price move. Sorry, guys. And you know that you know, as that, you know, we've stuck around, and thank you to everyone there. And I think at the end of the day, like, we're way past the time for talking. Like, at the end of the day, like, if all the shit that I've been saying for the last 3.5 years is right, then I got to prove it at this point, right? And then if I prove it, goddamn, I ain't going to shut up for like the next like 10 years. You'll see me on every panel just making fun of everybody, right? So, you know, let me get back to you guys, and let's see how I do in the next like, you know, couple of months or so.
Okay, that sounds good.
Sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen, our friend Sinjin David Jung. Thank you so much, brother, for joining us on the show, and happy early birthday, man. Live it up.
Thank you, man. Big 5-0. I'm going to just get plastered and liquored and just run around naked in the streets for like a few days and see what happens.
Can't wait to see it on the news, dude. Be safe, and we'll catch you next time, man.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Well, my friends, it's that time again where we've got to ride our dogs and ponies off into the sunset. Not the pit of despair, you fool. I said dogs and ponies. Or maybe if you're William Watson, we're riding our cats and cows into the sunrise. And either way, it's been a great day. That is at Sinjin David Jung, Jung. What a great interview, man. He was delightful.
Oh yeah, he's good. He's good. Yeah, we in a time zone that was more friendly to him. That's how we first met, was on that charity stream with Sam, and we were just holding down the fort together with I don't know, Doug Hype eating cupcakes at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Doug Hype in his fur coat.
Yes, eating cupcakes while we, I don't know, we were playing something together. I can't even remember what game we were just like cycling through. We played like 48 different Web3 games that happened to be live all in the span of 24 hours. It's a good time.
Man, okay. Well, If you've got a final thought, a last minute question, suggestion, good joke, word of wisdom, let us know. If you want to be like me and drink from the new Rise Up Morning Show mug, you can check it out at theriseupmorningshow.com and then find all of Sinjin's links in the show notes, the descriptions. And if you're watching in the future, hey, we hope your candles are green. Don't forget to leave us a little review or a like or a question, and jump into the Rise Up Discord server where the show will continue even after it's done. Discord.gg/riseup. Alex, have you got a final thought for us?
There was a lot that we covered. I think that my final,
we didn't get to ask him
thought,
about Pokemon. Damn it.
I know. Well, we could have spent hours with that one. But
honestly, truly.
No, I think, like I said, at a time when overall things are uncertain, and I believe that we need to be prioritizing our own security and independence more than we are. And I think that looks like maybe gambling a little bit less on some hype-based moonshot that really doesn't have a reason to come true. I would, again, my words of wisdom there, after years of waiting for this exact thing and barely ever catching anything, it is much more worth it to secure some profits at a time when you can feel good about it, and versus losing all of it because you were like, well, someone's going to make more than me, and that just don't sit right with me, and I'm gonna sit here and hope for it. So I don't know. I know I'm void screaming with a lot of this kind of stuff, but if you're debating taking some kind of profit because you're up on something, or because you're just way too exposed or way too over risked on something else, you might pump, you might not. Just think about which one you can live with.
You're a loser.
I'm sorry.
Hey, man.
I couldn't resist. I thought you were going to say, when you said maybe gambling, I thought you were going to end the sentence there. Maybe gambling. And I was like, what? A good thought.
Maybe
a good
gambling.
thought.
Maybe gambling.
And a wise word. I don't have any additional final thoughts for my friends except to say thank you, all of you, wherever you are, whenever you listen, for being the very best part of what we do. We're going to be back tomorrow, same time, same place, and we'll have an episode of Rise Up After Dark at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time tomorrow with our friend Nikki Scanella from Marinade. Don't miss it. Until then, everybody, stay safe, be well,